Coming up this morning on the Dattitude podcast, we had a whole lot of talk about Monday. And our return from vacation. But there was one thing that we kind of glossed over, and that's the contract of tight end Juwan Johnson. It's 3 years, $31 million, too much for a guy that had his best season in 2024, albeit it was just over 500 yards receiving. Is that too much? We're going to get into that. And who that's can thank Cam Jordan for taking a massive pay cut, which opened up some more cap room. How did they keep doing this? We'll tell you about it, as well as another wide receiver cutting his salary this morning. We'll spend half the show today with bracket tips from the best expert in college basketball, in my opinion. Thomas Casale is here. Lastly, also an expert in his own right, Gabe will share some interesting trends on the men's tournament that might help you fill out that last-minute winning bracket. We'll help you turn the week over on hump day if you help me get this camel out of my studio. How in the hell did that thing get in here anyway? I don't know. Cue the music.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, Dattitude family? Happy St. Joseph's Day. You bunch of heathens. Got Catholics out there. I know we got some Catholics watching the show today. Did you even know it's St. Joseph's Day? If you're around the New Orleans area, go find yourself an altar to visit. Besides the fact that you can pray for your, all the sins that you've committed over the past, how Mardi Gras just ended. It's Lent. It's another reason to go to church. Speaking from a guy who hasn't been to church in about 3 years. You never know what you'll find up there on the altar. Italian goodies. You can light a candle while you're up there. Who knows what? You can do all kinds of stuff. Oh, and say a little prayer for Dattitude, episode number 351, presented by Evangeline Securities for a Wednesday, March the 19th, 2025. In case you don't know, I'm Jim Derry. I am your host. 34 and a half years in New Orleans sports media scene. I thank you for being here, for being a part of our ever-growing Dattitude family. The St. Joseph altar. How many of you even know what that is? I mean, if you're not Catholic, you don't even have a reason to know. And not only that, I think it's kind of a New Orleans thing. My wife always goes to the St. Joseph altar every year. She's a Chappelle girl and go over there and fill up the altar. Do what you got to do. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, lots to talk about this morning. I'm not going to spend it too much on the altar. We got a lot of comments this morning. Thomas Casale is coming on. My former colleague here at NOLA.com is a sports betting expert at CBS Sportsline. But more importantly than that, he's coming on about 11:20, by the way. I'm not just saying this. And I didn't know anything about Tom before we started working together a couple years ago. And I think Gabe would agree with me. I have never seen anyone put together know college basketball like Thomas Casale knows college basketball. And so when I tell you that we might have the best kept secret on this show, I'm not just blowing smoke. So if you just want to fill out a bracket for fun, or if you're joining a pool that's only like $10, or you want to pick somebody, and we'll have the odds on the screen later and show you, and you just want to pick someone he's going to tell. I have no idea what he's going to tell me, but I can tell you, you can take this stuff to the bank. I am going to vouch for my former colleague, Thomas Casale. He's an expert. And I usually use expert in air quotes. The dude's really an expert. I mean, he goes like 70%. It's like nothing I've ever seen. So anyway, he's coming on 11:20 just for some tips and picks. Gabe's got a bunch of trends, and I'm a trends guy. So I can't wait to hear what kind of trends he's going to come up with later in the show. We're going to spend it's going to be half the show. We'll start off with Saints. We're going to end with Saints as well. No, I said we're going to start off with Saints. We do have some breaking news this morning. I'll get to it in just a minute. I like to tell you about things that happen in my life. You can go find me on X. I'm at Jim Derry Jr. on X. By the way, if you want to email me, Do that too at jderry at theadvocate.com. But go find me on X. I retweeted some clips from a game that I did last night. One of the weirdest baseball games that you will see. Okay. There were so many weird things. The only thing that didn't happen was like the 69 Mets, the black cat running across the field. We had covered Newman and De La Salle over in Algiers, which is in the West Bank of New Orleans, in the city limits. Newman wins 9-3. However, it was a tight game until the 7th inning. The first 4 runs Newman scored, I don't know that I've ever seen this. A couple of things that I've never seen. They scored their first 4 runs off of bases loaded walks, and in 3 separate innings. It wasn't like walk. No, 3 separate innings. They scored their first 4 runs. They led 4-3. They broke it open in the 7th, ended up winning 9-3. But so go back and look at these highlights. But here's some other things. Over the course of 4 innings, okay, 4 consecutive innings, they left 3 men on base in 4 consecutive innings. I have never seen that anywhere. In other words, they left the max. 12 men left on base, 2, 3, 4, 5 innings, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then to cap it all off, something else I've never seen, an eagle. There was an eagle sitting atop a light fixture from innings 4 on. And man, it was crazy. It was like an episode of Wild Kingdom. It was pretty fun. So anyway, go check that out. Breaking news in the NFL this morning. The Vikings say they're out on Aaron Rodgers. So that means they are going to go with J.J. McCarthy as their starting quarterback. Aaron Rodgers will not follow in Brett Favre's footsteps again. You know how Brett Favre went to the Jets and the Vikings. Well, Rodgers could have played for the Packers, Jets, and Vikings. But no, they're out. He's taking too long. I think they don't want to deal with the circus. However, that being said, I think the Vikings take a step back with J.J. McCarthy as their quarterback. I could be wrong. Now, look, I didn't expect Sam Darnold to be what Sam Darnold was, so maybe I'll be wrong there. We'll see. All right, we're about to get to some comments, and as we do, I will tell you that you can be a part of the show by typing in your comments, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, we'd love for you to be a part of the Dattitude family because they all live on YouTube. So go find us on YouTube. Please subscribe there. I tell you how you can get in touch with me and find me on X. We talked about Tom coming on at 11:20. That means we got even my Shaw math skills. We got 12 minutes to take comments. And to tell you this, before we get to Thomas and Gabe, let me tell you about our friends at Evangeline Securities. Not only are they a company that can help you decide if it's the right time to sell your family-run or privately held business, but maybe even more importantly, they can help you figure out what that business is worth. If that is you or someone you know, it's time to reach out to Evangeline's founding and managing partners, Nick Braden and Ron Hemel. They will start by scheduling a complimentary valuation from their offices. You can see them and find them either on Poydras Street or in Lafayette. And from there, you will be well informed to begin to make the decision on if you want to proceed. We only wish Mickey Loomis would have asked Nick what he thought of the Juwan Johnson contract before they signed it. That's a whole different story. Anyway, we'll fill you in more later in the show on what happens next with Juwan Johnson and your business. In the meantime, you can check them out at www.evangelinesecurities.com. Breaking news. In case you didn't see it yesterday, Cameron Jordan, kind of knew this was coming, right? I said there was, I seriously doubted they were going to cut Cam Jordan. And Cam Jordan wanted to stay with the Saints. He wants to retire with the Saints. So what did he do? Man, he did the team a big favor. He agreed to lower his base salary from $12.5 million to $1.255 million. This is according to Matthew Parris' story this morning. With a bonus of $4.8 million. His total value contract, according to Over the Cap, is now $6.45 million. You find this on NOLA.com/Saints, by the way, the Saints Insiders. Jordan's rework contract dropped his 2025, and I'm reading straight from Matt's story. Jordan's rework contract dropped his 2025 cap number from over $20 million to nearly 9.8, freeing up $10.3 million off the cap. His new contract still scheduled to void after next season. However, this is going to leave some dead money, which we knew anyway, but it's not as bad. Still going to be $18.7 million left on the books. I would say there's a very good chance that this is Cam Jordan's final season. So enjoy it. Number 94, again, very likely. I don't say very likely. I'd say very good chance I'd say it's better than 50-50. This is Cam Jordan's last season. So he may be on a retirement tour. Who knows? Anyway, saving the Saints some money, doing his team a favor. His bonus, let's see, $4 million in incentives he can earn throughout the season, ESPN reported. $2 million in playtime incentives. He gets $350,000 if he plays at least 50% of snaps. I don't know if he's going to get that or not. And up to $2 million in sack incentives. All right, maybe. Speaking of ESPN, also breaking news, Cedric Wilson reworked his contract. Woo! He moved his salary from $3.4 million to $1.17 million, saving $1.7 million in cap space. So now the Saints have their cap space. They are $31.9 million under the cap. I don't know how they keep doing this. You could talk about kicking the can all you want, but they work in magic, man. And look, again, like I said Monday, they got themselves in this situation. That's why we are where we are. You know, talking about kicking cans, say whatever you want. But they're now 14th in the NFL. That is a far cry from being what? There was $60 million over the cap just 3 weeks ago. I guess 3 weeks ago is when we went on vacation. There was $60 million over the cap. They're now $31.9 million under. Crazy. We're going to get to Juwan Johnson in a minute. Let's get to some of the comments. Randall, good morning. A-Town, good morning. Welcome back. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Says good show this past Monday. Even better debate with Gabe about quote-unquote King Douche Will Wade. Sorry, Gabe. Kyle Sherman, good morning, Dattitude. Apathy. No way Loomis clears $30 million in cap space just to sit on it after pay cuts and restructures, etc. Of course he's not going to sit on it. Why would he sit on it? Gabe. Better than Mr. Rogers, he means Matt McMahon. Oh, man, we're not going there again. Man, it's the attitude this morning. I like it. Saints for life, good morning. Gary, good morning. Brian S. Steve, good morning, Dattitude family. Sean, what do I think of? Oh, we're going to get into this. It may not be until after Gabe. This is definitely part of my Saints talk today. What do I think of Mel Kiper's mock of Jackson Dart at pick number 9? I think Mel Kiper should get off of TV. He's done. I haven't paid attention to Mel Kiper in like 25 years. And the only reason why I'm even sort of paying attention to him now is because he's freaking ludicrous. Ludicrous. Insanely ridiculous. Yeah, Gabe says he promised to retire. Jimmy Clausen sucks, and he's still yapping his trap. Dude, shut the hell up. Get him off of my screen. So I can't watch ESPN anymore during the. Well, I don't watch ESPN that much anyway. Because other than Stephen A. and SVP, I don't give a rat's ass about ESPN. And I don't like, I mean, there's very few that I still like. Of course, we like Hannah Storm because she was a guest on the show. And Stan Verrett because he was guest number 1 and was, was a New Orleanian. Other than that, I don't know. All right. Saint for life. You're right. Louisiana's 90% Catholic. St. Joseph Altar. You know what I'm talking about, the St. Joseph Altar? We're going to get into Juwan Joseph. He also says Saints overpaid for Juwan Johnson for his potential. He definitely doesn't deserve this contract, but it's a typical Loomis deal. I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to disagree with you because I had this debate with a couple of friends in the last couple of days. I'm going to present the other side. I think that the Saints overpaid for Juwan Johnson. I don't like the contract. I wish they would have spent the money somewhere else. However, I will give you some good reasons why maybe they did. Lance, who dat? Sean also says, how is Willie Green still coach of the Pelicans? Still losing by 46 points. You notice that I haven't talked about the Pels. I just can't. Oh, yeah, A-Town, thanks for the reminder. The prize for the Dattitude bracket pool should be an autographed 8x10 of UBN. What? If that's what you want, I can make it happen. I promise I can make it happen. By the way, if you, speaking of that, as Gabe said, And we said the other day, we do have a Dattitude bracket. We'll talk more about it later on. Just find us on ESPN. It is free. There is no prize whatsoever, except maybe an autographed 8x10 picture of UBN. Lance says Saints paid Juwan as if they expect him to be the big body possession receiver. Contract matches 49ers receiver Juwan Jennings. Kellen has a vision for him. I agree. He is 3 years, $30.8 million. 12th, okay? Among the tight ends, and this is kind of the debate that I got into, and I know we got time coming on about 4 minutes, so we don't have a whole. Look, reminder, we're going to jump when Tom gets in the green room. I'm putting him on because he's only going to be with us for about 15, 20 minutes, okay? And then we're going to come back to Saints. So we're going to be going back and forth between Saints and the Final Four today. Put this screen up. 3 years, $31.4 million. Now, while I have this up, let's show the chart, and we talked about this earlier. The changes. I've added Landon Young. He also re-signed yesterday. Signed a 1-year deal. So that's a great sign. And look, this team needs depth. Landon Young back. I think he's a fine backup offensive lineman. And he can play multiple positions. It's important to have that. This is the same. Basically, the chart hasn't changed much since the other day. Rework contracts. I don't have the numbers on the screen. We talked about Cam Jordan reworking. I did not have time to add Cedric Wilson because when I saw that it happened, I'd already made this chart for today. So you can add Cedric Wilson or rework contracts. We'll fix that for Friday's show. But when you talk about Juwan Johnson and where he's at, 12th in the NFL among tight ends, an average per year, $10.25 million a year, which is just ahead of, who's 13th? Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is 13th. Is Juwan Johnson the 12th best tight end in the league? I don't know. It's close. Can you name 12 better tight ends than Juwan Johnson? I don't know if I can. Here's ahead of him. Who's ahead of him right now? Travis Kelce makes $17.1 million a year, and he's like 55 years old. TJ Hawkinson, okay, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, great, and David Njoku, Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth, I guess he's a little better, maybe. Dalton Schultz, I don't know. Gabe says no, he's a Texans fan. I don't think he's better. Evan Ingram, not really. Noah Fant, no. Who's right below him? Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Tyler Higbee. So, when you look at those numbers, look, that's what the market dictates. I'm not saying that. I think that's an absurd contract for a tight end, but that's what they're paying tight ends these days. It is what it is. Again, we're going to talk plenty more about Juwan Johnson after we talk about the Final Four. Nick UBN's here. He says, will the Bengals be the first team not to be able to afford a defense? I don't know. Lance says they should change Sir Saints jersey to number 94. Cam has repped this team to the city in the highest degree. Couldn't agree more. Look, I didn't necessarily want the Saints to pay Cam, but dude's doing everything he can to help this team and to retire a Saint. $18 million in dead money is crazy. Yes and no. Look, you do what you can. It's working so far. You could say what you want about the last 4 or 5 years that have stunk, but part of it's because not just the leadership and administration, the leadership they've had on the field. Don't get me started. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. Georgia, Charlene Keller, good morning. Welcome to the Dattitude family. Lance Stobar, Jackson Dart sucks. Yeah. Rocky says there's no way the Pels go into next season with Willie Green. Have you watched this team? I don't know if I agree with that. Apathy says Mel Kiper had a top 5 sports media meltdown over Jay Cutler. Yeesh. Brian says, morning, who that's? Besides him, who thinks Kiper is a loudmouth talking head who throws hand grenades just so he can say, I told you so? UBN says he appreciates the love, but his wife doesn't even want an 8x10 print of him for free. Hakeem says he's a good receiving tight end. Foster Moore is a better blocking tight end. He did have 5 receiving touchdowns last season. I actually think it was 3. But he did have over 500 yards receiving. I think he had 50 catches. I'm just saying, again, something we're going to get into after we talk about college basketball for a little bit. We're going to come back to this. I promise. This is how we will end the show today. The show won't be as long today. We're going to go about an hour and a half today. And lastly, before we get to Thomas coming up, he's in the green room. Juwan Johnson's only problem is to keep holding him back is his health every year. I don't know. We'll see. Again, we'll come back to Juwan Johnson. Got plenty to talk about because I do want to get your opinions. Again, we talk about these contracts and how ridiculous. The biggest problem I have is the difference. You're talking about tight ends making $10 million a year, an average tight end, which is what he is. And he's the 12th highest paid tight end now in the league. The biggest problem I have is when you compare tight end money and average tight end, what's his worth to the team as opposed to like Alvin Kamara? He and Alvin Kamara are basically making the same amount of money. That's the problem I have. It's not Juwan Johnson's fault, and it's not even the Saints' fault because if you want a tight end, you got to pay for him. Again, something we'll get into in a little bit. But I want to bring in our old colleague and friend, Thomas Casale, CBS Sportsline, former sports betting director here at NOLA.com. Thomas, it's great to see you. And I wanted to bring you on because when I think college basketball, and I'm not just saying this, when I think of college basketball, I think of you because, I mean, you come up with some stuff that I don't even know how you come up with. And so we had to bring on the expert here this morning.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you. All right, let's not waste any time. What did you think? I want to get to it. I want to know what you thought, your overall thoughts of the brackets, the top seeds. I think they got the top seeds right. That, and people complaining about North Carolina, whatever, but they showed that maybe they do belong last night. Just your overall thoughts of the brackets. Maybe a couple of teams you thought should have got in and a couple of teams that shouldn't have got in.
Yeah, listen, the problem with North Carolina is the way the committee says they select teams they shouldn't have been in. That's the committee's fault. And, it's like, and those are, I wouldn't be surprised if North Carolina makes the Elite Eight. It's like Syracuse back in that COVID year when they probably should have been in the tournament and then they made a run. It's not that they're not talented enough to be in the tournament. It's just, I think with the way the committee has always said, this is how we look at the resume, they got in because they were North Carolina. I mean, and I've seen it before. Many years ago, it happened with Indiana. It's happened with UCLA. Hard to believe now, but a long time ago, it once happened with Duke when they were on the bubble. So listen, these teams are going to get the nod. I thought overall the brackets, they're pretty, I think Florida got the toughest draw in the West with St. John's and Texas Tech and Maryland. Those are talented teams that could give them a little bit of a run. I think Tennessee got a nice draw to make the Elite Eight where, maybe they face Houston there and what would be a bloodbath. But I like Tennessee's draw on that bottom half of the bracket. So, I think overall the brackets are pretty even. That people are always going to say that Duke has an easy road, but, Duke's better than all those teams. Like, who are they going to put in there that's really going to compete with Duke? So, their bracket's a little bit easier than, say, like Florida, because I think Arizona's a week 4 and, Wisconsin's in there. They're kind of a week. So, I get it. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good job.
Yeah, I agree. And, every year it's like, when you have 68 teams, it doesn't matter whether you have 4 or 68. I mean, when we talk about football and now 12, when you talk about 12, somebody's being mad because the team they think 13 or 14 should have got in. When you talk about 68, team they think 69 or 70 should have got in. And it is, you just can't be perfect when it is. You can't please everyone. You're never going to please everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, North Carolina is better than West Virginia, player to player. But if you're saying like, how does the committee say they select teams? Right. Then I think West Virginia has an argument just based on the past. I was glad that Xavier got in. That's a team I liked a little bit. I thought they could win a couple games if they did get in. But I'm with you. I'm usually just tell me the teams that are in, and then I'll go from there. It's that North Carolina is a special circumstance because they're North Carolina and they have some top end talent. But usually that last team in isn't much of a make or break thing for the tournament.
All right, well, let me show some odds here on the screen on the left-hand side of the screen. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't see them. the order, the top 8 as far as odds goes, the favorites goes Duke, Florida, Auburn, Houston. The top 4 seeds are 1 through 4. You got Tennessee, a big drop from Houston, Bama, Michigan State, St. John's. According to the odds makers, Thomas, the number 1 seeds, the odds makers think that this is a year where a 1 seed is going to win this tournament.
And I'm with that. I don't think, if you're looking for upsets, look in that 3, 4, 5 range. I don't think you're going to see a ton of upsets with these top teams. I really don't. I think it's a year similar to when Gonzaga and Baylor were kind of on a collision course. Now, Auburn has slipped a little bit. I actually have Auburn at 28-1 from June, and I had them a couple years ago at 70-1, and they peaked too early that year. It's interesting, did they peak too early this year? We'll find out. But, for all of the season, Auburn was like the highest rated team in the history of KenPom. Like they were, right. I mean, Duke was there because they have Cooper Flag, but Auburn was by far the best team in the country. And then they kind of hit a skid at the end. I think people who just started watching college basketball saw Florida last week, but Florida's 30-4. This has been Florida been doing this all year. They're one of the most complete teams in the country with offensive rebounding, guard play, defense. So they're going to be tough. The one team I'll give a little bit of a warning on. Listen, I live in New York. I grew up with Big East basketball. I think it's great that St. John's is back. Okay.
My ghost of Louis Carnesecca.
Yeah. My personal opinion, I think Pitino is 1 year away. The Big East was so bad that I think, everybody talks about the ACC and how bad the ACC was, and it was bad. The Big East wasn't much better. And, St. John's is on Jimmy Fallon, and it's, I'm not saying they're not a good team, but I also think they have weaknesses that some of these other top teams don't.
If you want to take a flyer on one of those teams, Tennessee plus 2,200, Bama plus 2,200, Michigan State plus 2,500, St. John's we just mentioned plus 2,800. If you're going to take a flyer on one of those teams and say, you know what, maybe there's some value. I don't necessarily think they're going to win, but it's worth a shot at those numbers. Who would you take out of those 4 teams?
Yeah, listen, I think the Midwest region is similar to last year when I picked Tennessee to make the Final Four, only because I thought them and Purdue were going to make the Elite 8. And they did, and it was a close game. We got a couple of bad calls at the end with Edey, and Purdue won by 6. I think Tennessee and Houston might be on a collision course there, too. Okay. I really like Tennessee's draw, and, that'll just be a bloodbath. And then maybe they emerge. And I'll say this, listen, Alabama has defensive issues, but there's not many teams that can beat Alabama. They played by far the toughest schedule in college basketball, and I've never seen this before. They've scored 90-plus points 18 times. I'm sure it happened back when Loyola Marymount's day. I didn't go back and check it. But in recent history, I've never seen a team score 90-plus almost 20 times in a season. So when you're looking at just matchups, I don't think there's a ton of teams that can beat Alabama. Because, I know people are talking about maybe St. Mary's in round 2. Right. I just think Alabama's too athletic for them. I don't know. Listen, you hold Alabama to 80, and that's considered a low-scoring game. I don't know if St. Mary is going to hold them to 50. I can see Alabama playing Duke in that Elite 8 game. So I would say Alabama and Tennessee, value-wise, are the 2 I would look at.
Interestingly, you talk about Alabama. They were plus 1,200 before the SEC tournament started, and now they make it to the semifinals, and they're plus 2,200. I don't get that huge jump. That is a big, and I'm a little aggravated because I got Bama at plus 1,600 before the season, and now I could have got a better price on them now. So maybe I'll put another.
Yeah, I got them at plus 1,300. So yeah, we could have waited.
Yeah, could have. Yeah, who knew though? I find Duke interesting at plus 320. The uncertainty of Cooper Flag and going into this tournament, and he's probably going to play, but that just goes to show you how deep Duke is and how good they are. That even though the odds makers don't know for sure if he's playing, they're still the favorite.
Yeah, the thing about Duke that is tough is that when I do analysis for college basketball, 99.9% of the time, you'll never hear me talk about players. I don't think they matter. I think Missouri's a good team. They have 8 good college players. You know what I mean? There's not a ton of players at the college level that make a difference night in and night out if you have a good roster. I look more at systems and coachings and matchups. And at the college game, it's not like the NBA where, a couple of guys are going to dominate games. Cooper Flagg is the difference. Because I'm going to be honest with you. He reminds me when I was watching Ohio State spring game, they were talking about a receiver they had that was going to be the best that's ever been there. And they were comparing him to Terrell Owens, and that was Jeremiah Smith. And he was, as much hype as he had, he was better than the hype. I got to give it to Cooper Flagg. He's been better than the hype. The guy's been phenomenal. I mean, he's a phenomenal basketball player. So if he's healthy, he's a guy who could be a difference in the Elite Eight and Final Four in tight games, in my opinion, because I think he could take them over.
Would love to see him wearing a Pelicans jersey next year. We'll see how that goes. All right, look, real quickly, I'd like to go through each bracket. You just tell me you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but one big upset maybe in each bracket and who you pick to win each bracket. I actually did a screenshot of the CBS Sports brackets in honor of you from CBS Sportsline. Okay. Here we go. Real quick, we'll start with the South. Who if you want to pick an upset game, maybe a first round or a later round matchup, what do you like in this team? Maybe someone that's going to go further. What's your biggest upset in the South?
Yeah, this is the region I didn't have a ton of upsets, only because I faded the two popular ones, the Yale and the UC San Diego. But Yale that's a tough matchup for Texas A&M. They don't shoot well. Yale can slow that game down. So I think that's interesting. The team I had going a little further than most probably is Ole Miss.
Okay.
I think there's going to be one of these SEC teams that wasn't at the elite level SEC, that was kind of that second tier. I feel now that they're out of the grind of the nightly conference, is going to make a run. Now, obviously, North Carolina looked really good last night. So, I wasn't expecting that they were going to win by 50 when the seedings. But I think my thing is this. If Ole Miss gets by UNC, I like their second round matchup because Iowa State is without their leading scorer, and they're kind of beat up. So that's one of those games. If they can win one, I think they can win the next game. I went with Auburn in the region. I think Michigan State has a chance. It's hard for me to erase the entire season of Auburn because of what happened down the stretch. But it's, this isn't a region. I don't know if you're going to see a sleeper come out of this region. I think it's going to be either Auburn or Michigan State. Does
it bother you at all that Bruce Pearl's failures, in March?
Yeah, listen, the thing I look at is this. I'm looking at their bracket right now, okay? I don't know who's going to beat them in the upper part of the bracket unless A&M gets them again.
Yeah.
So I think they have, and I don't even know if A&M is going to make the Sweet 16. That would be the one team because they've already played them that could knock them out. But I think Auburn has a nice path if they don't really choke to get to the Elite Eight. And then when it comes to the tournament, it's all about winning those first couple of games and you get your confidence going. So, yeah, listen, I could definitely see Auburn getting upset with the way they finished the season. They're not the lock that they were a month ago, in my opinion, when I thought there's no way they're not making the Final Four. But I took them anyway.
All right, let's go to the West, bottom left side of this bracket, and Florida's the number one seed. You say this is the toughest draw for a one seed in here, and there are some pretty darn good teams in here. And you look at all the SEC teams. You got Arkansas, Missouri in the bottom side of this bracket. Oklahoma is in this bracket as well. 4 SEC teams here in the West.
Yeah, Missouri was going to be my Elite Eight sleeper because of their style of play. I just hate the first round matchup. I hate that contrast of styles. If Missouri had played Grand Canyon, I'd have bet $1,000 on them because they'd run them right off the court. That's you got Drake who plays not at a slow pace, at an all-time slow pace. They play four corners. I hate the Drake. I've lost the last 2 years with them in the tournament. But listen, if they get up by 8, it's like being up by 25 because they won't shoot the ball till 1 second. So that would frustrate Missouri. But I think if Missouri gets by that game, they're interesting because Texas Tech is dealing with some injuries. Here's the interesting game, in my opinion. Let's say St. John's wins, so it beats Omaha. That's a tough second round game against Kansas or Arkansas. Yeah. You're talking about 2 preseason top 12 teams. And listen, Kansas is 7 for a reason. They weren't nearly as good as anyone, and they don't have a lot of scoring options. Arkansas is getting, Boogie Flan back. That they had some issues, but when you start everything over, That's a deadly second round game for St. John's. And I'll say this. I know people are just starting to watch college basketball and the name UConn is going to pop out to them. And I'm saying if UConn beats Oklahoma, they will get slaughtered by Florida. And I mean slaughtered. They're not a good team. I think there's things going on in the locker room there. There's a lot going on with UConn that I think they're going to get beat pretty good. So, I did have Florida getting through this region. Maryland could be tough. There's some tough games throughout that I think could bother them. But overall, I had them as one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country, so I took them.
And lastly, do you think Memphis is overseeded? That's the 12 that I like, because I watched Memphis play in the AAC tournament. I wasn't all that impressed. Do you think Colorado State can beat Memphis?
I do. Listen, the Mountain, it's hard to pick Mountain West teams.
Yeah.
They're 3-17 against the spread in round 1 since 2019. Okay. They don't win. It's just the way it goes. But this Colorado State team at the end of the year, they weren't just winning games. They're blowing everybody out. And I love their coach. I think they have a great coach. And I think it took that team some time after losing pieces from last year. And this is going to happen in college basketball, especially with your mid-major schools now, to get their lineups right, to fit people in where they belong. And I love Colorado State in that matchup. I do. I know they're the Mountain West, but I think that's the one Mountain West team that can win a game or two.
Gabe says he's convinced the committee flipped Louisville and Memphis. I can't necessarily disagree, because I
bet that Louisville was my first bet that I made, the money line against Creighton. I think Louisville, I get it's the ACC. They've lost 2 games since December 14th, and one was last week to Duke. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yep, no doubt about it. Let's move on. Top right, and you're talking about the Midwest, and Houston is a team, because they're the 4th of the 4 seeds, they don't maybe get the recognition that's due. And you talk about Tennessee being in this bracket, and that is going to be a tough one for them. But man, I just think Houston is better than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, Houston's really good. Listen, I got a lot of money invested in Gonzaga from bets I placed last April and over the summer. And I know there's people who think they have a chance if they beat Georgia. I'm not one of them. Gonzaga, their best win this year is Baylor, San Diego State, and St. Mary's. That's who they've beaten. I just think if you put Santa Clara on their jerseys, they wouldn't even have made the tournament. So
a lot of people will pick them because they're Gonzaga, like you said.
Yeah, and I know a lot of smart people who like them in that next game against Houston. And I'm like, listen, man, maybe I'm not seeing it right, because I'm in for $60K if they win it all, which they won't. Geez. I would obviously cash out at some point. But I'm just saying, I would need them to beat Houston in order to start considering it, and I don't see it. So I think Houston, again, this reminds me of last year in the Midwest. Purdue stinks. Okay, they're a 4. They stink. Illinois stinks. Kentucky is the most vulnerable 3 seed in the tournament. Mm-hmm. So I see Tennessee and Houston as if you're looking at just on paper, it's the NCAA tournament, anything can happen. Just on paper, that's the easiest 1-2 matchup, I think, to predict to the Elite 8. And I took Tennessee to win.
But otherwise, you see some other potential upsets. What about people around here, obviously? What do you think of McNeese and Will Wade playing Clemson?
That's the most interesting first-round game for a couple reasons. One, McNeese has a much better chance this year than last year. Gonzaga was a bad matchup. They ran him off the court. McNeese wants to slow the game down, and so does Clemson. So now you're talking about a game that could be played in the 50s or low 60s. That's McNeese's game. And the other thing I think is interesting with this game is it's one of the only games where the line hasn't moved at all. It's been 7.5 the entire time. I've been waiting for 8.5 to take McNeese with the points because I wanted it a little higher. It hasn't budged one bit. So I think McNeese is live this year. And the thing I think is very interesting is last year they were the talk, everybody was McNeese is going to beat Gonzaga. I haven't heard a word about them this year, so they're flying a little bit under the radar.
Charles Manga says Duke's going to win it all. Well, let's see. Let's go to that bracket as we finish it up here. They are the kings of the East. They are the number 1 seed in the East. Duke will take on the winner of tonight's game. And look, I mean, and when you look at this bracket, we talked about the potential of whether Cooper Flagg's going to play or not. They're just that deep and that talented. And I really think, my opinion is, when you look at this bracket, it's kind of set up for them to come out of there, unless Alabama just gets super hot.
No, I agree. You know, I'm trying to find teams that could beat them. You know, maybe Arizona would have a chance if they were just hitting shots like they were doing in the Big 12 tournament, but it's not a great matchup for them. Wisconsin's not going to beat them. You know, again, Alabama, with the way they play offense, is always a threat, but that's the game where I think their defensive liabilities hurt them, and I think Duke beats them.
Yep, I agree with you. Give me your Final Four. You can't go all ones. Well, you can do whatever you want. I mean,
I went Tennessee.
Are you going Tennessee? Okay, so 3
Yeah,
ones.
that's my sleeper.
3 1s and a 2 here. Sleeper's a 2 seed. Look, it's tough. I mean, again, I'll show the odds on the screen, but you know, the 4 favorites are the 1 seeds, and by a large margin for a reason. Who are you picking to win it all, Thomas Casale?
I went Duke in Florida, and I went with Duke. You know, I'm not a Duke fan. I don't really like them. If Flagg comes back healthy, the Duke is a very good defensive team too. And I know the ACC stinks, but they beat Auburn earlier in the year too. I know November matchups don't really matter now, but it's not like they don't play a really tough non-conference schedule. They do. And they had a lot of success there. So listen, I just think when I try to pick a winner, I'd like to look at their path and see who is the least likely to get upset. And in my opinion, that's Duke.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. But if you're like me and you don't like picking a team that you think that half the field's going to pick, which is what I think, and I think it's going to be 60% either Duke or Florida. If I were going to pick someone other than Duke or Florida, then who's your next pick after that?
I would take Tennessee. I like their road. You know, and I think they're an SEC team that's getting a little, you know, they're not flashy. And Tennessee, listen, people talk about Rick Barnes, but they talked about Matt Painter too. And Matt Painter made the title game last year. You know, the Mountain West stinks, but San Diego State made the title. You got to be careful about narratives, right? And I think Tennessee, there's teams that match up well with them. Kentucky's beaten them twice. They're in that region. I don't know if Kentucky will get that third chance, but if you can spread them out and like Kentucky does, I think that's what hurts them. But if you look at their path, there's not a lot of teams that can do that. Like Houston is perfect for Tennessee. That's a steel cage death match. They're looking for that kind of game. And then if they get Duke, listen, they have a more than good chance of defeating Duke, I think. So I would go with Tennessee.
Last question. We have been debating back and forth on here about college football. We just talked about Will Wade. Your opinion on Will Wade, has he revitalized his image? Is he about to get a big job somewhere? Do people care about what happened before the new NIL rules? Does it change everything? What's your opinion on Will Wade? And for that matter, with LSU and Matt McMahon, did they make a change or should they make a change?
Yeah, so Will Wade's going to get a job. Like people care, then they care for 2 years, then it goes away. You know, we see it all the time, right? It's that, well, we can't hire that guy for a couple of years, but then we can go back and get him. So I do think if it's not this year, it'll be next year for him. LSU is in a tough spot because they're just lost in the SEC right now. Vanderbilt is better than them. You know, there's so many teams that are better than them, and I don't see what their path is to competing unless they get a big name coach that can bring players in. You know what you're talking about, by far the best conference in America, and they just can't compete right now. They don't have the same level of talent. So right now, I don't see a path. I thought they would be a little better than they were this year.
So did I.
I was a little bit higher. I didn't know if they'd make the tournament, but I thought they would be roaming around the bubble at least, and they were worse than I thought they were going to be.
Well, we see Arkansas went out and got John Calipari, and maybe it helped them a little bit. Maybe LSU needs to go out and get that big name. I don't know necessarily who that might be, but we'll see how it works.
And if it's not a big name, Jim, it's got to be somebody who knows how to work today's atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like, you know, listen, Bill Self is one of the 5 best coaches in college basketball.
No question.
He's having trouble with, you know, where's the talent? They got like a couple of players.
These new NIL rules, I think these older school coaches are just having trouble figuring out how to use the NIL. Just like in football, Nick Saban says, you know what, I'm 72 years old. I don't want to learn how to use the NIL rules. I'm just getting out of here.
Right. So those are your two options, I think, is to get like a bigger name coach or try to find one of these younger coaches who's really has a grasp on how to get players to come to your school. Those are the only two ways you're going to win now.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Thomas Casale, I know you're not going to get a whole lot of sleep over the course of the next 4 or 5 days, but you will be enjoying every second of it. Enjoy college basketball, the tournament, and maybe we'll all make some money together.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. Take care and good luck.
Glad to have you on. We'll talk to you soon. Thomas Casale, everybody, and I'm telling you, expert. Man, take these words back. And look, this is just one of those weird years when you're talking about NCAA tournament where I think that I hate chalking it up. I just think that this is one of those years where you're just going to have to bite it. And if you're doing brackets, you need to figure out where the best place to take the chalk is. Because when you look at tournaments, and you know me, if you've listened to me long enough when you talk about betting, I'm the road less traveled guy. I'm looking for where is the road less traveled. I'm looking to take chalk where other people aren't taking chalk. Okay. And this is a year to do that. And, Thomas talked about Gonzaga, a perfect example up there where people are going to take Gonzaga over Houston. Perfect time to take Houston. Maybe you take Houston all the way into the Final Four because people are going to have them losing in that second round. I don't know. We'll get into that. All right. We're going to move on again. I know we got some comments in the queue about some different things. Daryl Romero, great show. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate you coming in. Yeah, we're going to keep on talking about the tournament. Again, we're going to end the show with Juwan Johnson talk. There's plenty more, and I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to Mel Kiper. I can't help it. When I just laughed. I actually saw that yesterday when I was eating lunch. And I'm like, you're joking, right? So the funny thing about it is at 10, he's got Will Campbell at 10. If the Saints pass Will Campbell and take Jackson Dart, you're going to want to be on. We're going to do a live show, whether it's just us here on Dattitude or whether it's like we've been doing and do it with Saints Insiders, and I'm on that show. We're going to be doing a live show. You're going to want to listen into that, I promise. Because if they pass on Will Campbell and they take Jackson Dart, I think there's a minuscule chance that actually would happen. But if they do that, you'll want to hear it. I'm going to talk more about that coming up in about 20 minutes. But I want to bring on Gabe Henderson, who we're going to talk a little bit more about March Madness here. You've been working on a lot of trends with your job, and you had to stay up. I know Sunday was a long day for you with the brackets coming out and digging into the trends. I know there's some things you like. What you got this morning?
Well, I've gotten a total of maybe 10 hours of sleep.
Yeah, who needs sleep when you're 26,
been up
27 years old?
Doing trends. And this is your friendly reminder that you have less than 24 hours to lock in those bracket picks.
That's right. And again, for those watching out there, if you're interested, just for funsies, you might get an 8x10 autograph picture of UBN if you're lucky. But there is no prize whatsoever. It's for bragging rights. We will definitely announce your name here on the show. There is a Dattitude bracket on ESPN. Go search for it. It's free. Free to enter. There's no password. There's no anything. You can just dive right into the Dattitude bracket. And you can compete against Gabe and I. Put your bracket in there, and we'll have some fun with it. All right, Gabe Henderson. What is, I know you did some trends. What is your what are some of those things? First, lead off with your favorite one, your hot take trend.
My hot take upset or my hot take trend?
No, let's go trend first. Let's save the upset for a second.
Okay. And I will say, I know I'm no expert like Thomas, but if anyone does have matchup questions, I've researched just about every one of these.
Yeah, and by all means,
happy to answer.
By all means, if anyone wants to share some of their opinions, feel free. I'll show them on the screen. Go ahead, Gabe.
My favorite trend might actually be fading Tom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's that Rick Barnes, who is the coach at Tennessee,
right,
and Bruce Pearl,
both terrible in March.
Are not good in March.
By the way, real quick, before I forget, because if I don't do this now, and I apologize for interrupting, but if I don't do this now, I may forget. I've got to talk about our friends at Evangeline Securities. I know you don't mind me jumping in with them. We told you earlier we would let you know more about how Evangeline Securities can help you figure out what your family-run or privately held business might be worth and whether it's time to sell. Well, how do they do it? Of course, after their complimentary valuation of your company, if you decide to proceed. Native New Orleanians Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and the folks at Evangeline will begin an extensive auction process from among established private equity funds from around the world. And they will maximize the return for the founder and his or her family. Evangeline Securities is the top producer on their platform. There are very few companies like them in this area, none with their dedication and success. They might even be able to help you with your Final Four picks. Reach out to them. They're fully licensed, ready to serve you. Get in touch with Nick and Ron about what's really important. It's not your brackets. It's not Juwan Johnson. It's the rest of your life. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. Back to Final Four talk. All right, Rick Barnes, Bruce Pearl, terrible in March. One of these years, it's got to happen. They're getting old. It's got to happen before too long.
They are. And here's the thing with Rick Barnes. And I specifically mention him because I think he's got a longer track in March. He's 30-28 all time in March. He's coached some of the best players to ever grace the college scene. I mean, look Kevin Durant. That's all you got to say is Kevin Durant. Do you know how many Final Fours he's made in 38 years coaching?
He's made a couple, right?
He's made one.
I thought it was two.
Nope, he's made one.
All right, well.
He's made one Final Four run in his 38 years, and he's lost on the first weekend as a single-digit seed 14 times.
Yikes.
Meanwhile, Bruce Pearl, he's slightly better in March. He's 17-13 in March.
No, it's the
but
Midwest.
Auburn has only made it out of the first weekend once
there's Auburn
during his tenure.
But you look at Auburn's bracket, and I mean, honestly, and I know anything can happen, but I just think this is set up for Auburn to make it to the Final Four here. I'm not saying, whatever. You don't need to pick on one at all, but I mean, Louisville's that's a tough 8-9 matchup. If Louisville wins that game, they are going to make it tough on Auburn. I agree that Louisville is in Lexington. Tough, yeah, man, but I just don't know how you pick against Auburn and make it to the Final Four there.
I'll tell you, Sparty.
Oh, Sparty.
Here's one trend, and this is actually
I am Sparty. Oh no,
I'm big on trends, but I am going to fade this one. No team that has ever been ranked outside, I believe, the top 12 to start the season and been a 2 seed has ever made the Final Four.
Okay.
But I like Michigan State here because Michigan State's weakness is it doesn't shoot the 3 ball well. It's basically a power conference version of St. John's. Great 2-point percentage team, high efficiency. They defend really well. They run into problems when they face teams who knock down threes at a high success rate. And I don't see that team in this bracket. So I just don't like Auburn because no team that has ever lost 3 of their last 4 going into the tournament has ever won the championship. And I'm fading Auburn. I've had it in my phone for the last 12 months because Auburn was my champion pick last year. Do not pick Auburn. So I just can't do it. I certainly understand why, but I agree with Tom. I think they peaked too early, and I like Michigan State to come out of that.
I'm going to throw this out there. No team had ever won the Super Bowl losing their last 2 regular season games until the New Orleans Saints lost their last 3 regular season games and then won the Super Bowl. So it is rare, though, for a team. Mm-hmm. I am always one that likes teams that are hot going into the tournament. Going into any tournament. Doesn't necessarily have to be the NCAA tournament. It can be, which is why I don't really like the LSU women's basketball team. Besides their injuries, I just don't like the way they're playing right now. We haven't even talked about the women. We'll probably talk more about the women next week, assuming LSU makes it to the Sweet 16.
I'll give you a tip for the women's bracket right now. Take UConn.
Yeah, that's
number 1 net ratings.
Yeah, that's a tough tip. Charles says Michigan State over Auburn easily.
I wouldn't say easily. Michigan State hasn't made things easy this year. They made easy work of the Big Ten overall.
Yeah.
But they've not made things easy on themselves. I will say one potential area of concern for Auburn could be Michigan if Michigan makes it that far. The problem with Michigan is they turn the ball over at an extremely high rate. I believe they're bottom 25 in the country in turnovers. The thing with Michigan is they have 2 7-footers, and they can just pick and roll teams to death.
You're talking about the Wolverines, not Michigan State.
The Wolverines, yeah, the Wolverines. And they're a trendy pick. A lot of people like UC San Diego.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
UC San Diego has not played a single power conference team. So if your baptism to playing a power conference team is a team with 2 7-footers, no thanks.
I'm not doing that either. All right, give me your trendy upset. What's your upset trend?
Well, I mean, if you look at just stats for upsets, the NCAA classifies an upset as a team that beats a team ranked 5 seeds ahead of it. So you're looking at 11-6 matchups or 16-1 all the way.
And we know that there's almost always, I think that trend ended not too long ago, but there's almost always a 12 that beats a 5.
So the 12 beats 5 at a 35% clip since 1985 under this current format. There have been 12 over 5 upsets in 33 of the 39 tournaments played. And so I think there's 2 12 seeds that I like this year. I like Colorado State just because of the injury to Hunter with Memphis.
On this side right there? No, that's the wrong one.
Other side.
Other side.
Top left, I believe.
Top left. Well, I get it right. 1 out of 4. I got a 1 out of
no. Sorry, you had it right. Bottom left. I don't like picking match teams in that matchup. I like Colorado State here. And then another team here, I like McNeese. They come back with experience this year, which is something they didn't have. Fun fact, Brandon Murray, former LSU under Will Wade, plays for McNeese. They have, I believe, 8 players who score 7 points or more. They're deep. You just don't see that. Clemson's a little banged up. Clemson's a very good team. They made an Elite 8 run last year, and they returned a lot of that experience, so a lot of people like them. No one's talking about McNeese. I quietly like them here. The other 12-5s I'm staying away from.
Yeah. Colorado State is my favorite 12 seed pick. I just don't know that.
And I actually little
all the hype over McNeese. Clemson and McNeese have the same record, and Clemson's played in the ACC. So I mean that's it's hard for me not to pick Clemson.
But if you McNeese played a lot tougher teams this year. I believe they only lost to Alabama by 8 when they played in Tuscaloosa. So this McNeese State team is a lot better than the one that played last year. But a little shameless plug for the 12-5. I do have an article up on Sportsbook Review where I rank the upset potentials of the 12-5s. It's one of the many articles I've done with trends and March Madness in general. And then today, I actually have a piece coming out ranking teams in terms of their upset potential from 13 seeds to 16 seeds.
Sportsbookreview.com.
Sportsbookreview.com.
All right, check it out. Gabe, final thought here before we move on.
Final thought here on the tournament.
Whatever you want.
I like UConn to lose in the first round. They are 357th, I think, in the country in perimeter defense, and Oklahoma shoots the 3-ball well. So, like Tom said, and if UConn does manage to win that game, they're going to get bounced by Florida. I like Duke overall, and then a tip for people who are making your brackets: the safest way to fill out a bracket in your final 4, have 2 1 seeds, 1 2 seed, and then 1 surprise team. So, and Gonzaga over Houston, while that is a popular pick, it's not without justification. Gonzaga hasn't played all that well. They haven't been consistent, but they return a lot of experience from last year's team. Mark Few has made 9 straight Sweet 16 appearances, and they are Ken Palm darlings. They are 9th rated in Ken Palm. So those are my final thoughts on the tournament. I have Duke winning it all, just like Thomas. I know it's a trendy pick, but it's a chalky.
Yeah. And then look, I don't disagree with you. I probably will have Duke in one of my. I'll probably do 2 brackets. One of them I'm going to have Duke, but I don't know. Maybe I won't, because I just don't want to pick something that I know that. Obviously, when I say everybody else, I'm exaggerating, but everybody else is going to pick Duke. I know a lot of people. I think Florida might be value though.
No, because Florida's the second most picked team to win it all. So,
Well, of course,
if you're fading,
but my guess is it's probably twice as many. If I had to guess, it's probably close to twice as. You don't think?
No.
Do they have the stats on this?
Yeah, let me look it up while you keep talking about that.
Yeah, look, but all that being said, I'm not saying I'm necessarily going to pick them to win it all because I don't know if I have that in me. But I like Houston to at least make a run to the Final Four, maybe even the championship game, because that's a team that I think you're going to get more value on them to pick them in a bracket. And then look, 100%. You get them to the Final Four or even the Final 8, and then you just start rooting for them because you have them and nobody else has them, or hardly anyone else has them. So you get yourself in a good spot. Go ahead.
Yeah, here are stats on it. Duke is picked in 25% of brackets. Florida's picked in 21% of brackets.
Okay. So
and then 46%
of the brackets. That is, I will come back. That is insane. That 46% of the brackets have either Duke or Florida, which goes to show you. And if you're in, let's just say there are 10 brackets and you're playing in a bracket challenge and you're playing in a 10-teamer. If you pick Duke or Florida, you got to be the best of that half of your bracket to even win it. You can't just pick Duke or Florida. You got to be the best of that half. So then they still got to win. So that's why I got to stay
Here's an important reminder about bracket pools, though, and winning those. The single most important thing to get right is your champion. A lot of people spend a lot of time mulling over the first round matchups because those are the exciting ones. There's where we have the most trends. Getting your Final Four and Elite Eight right is more valuable than anything else. So that's why I'm okay taking a team like Duke.
However, though, that being said, if you're going to take a Duke, it is even more. You're 100% right. However, if you're going to take a Duke or a Florida, it's even more important to get your early picks right because you're going to be in with everybody else who's picking Duke and Florida, and you have to be ahead of them already. So this is a different year than usual. I am not a usually chalky guy. I love the theory of picking 2 1s, a 2, and then somebody else. I'm usually a guy who picks, like, I'll take a 1, a 2, and then either a 1 or a 2, and then somebody surprising. To me, that's my recipe for success. But this year, I don't know that I can do that. I don't think I'm going to take someone else. But my surprise is actually going to be like a Houston or an Auburn or someone that is a little. You said Auburn's 10.5%. What is Houston?
8.8.
Okay, so there you go. So only 20% or almost 20% on Auburn and Houston combined, where it's over 20% on Duke and Florida. So that's why when you're talking about taking a bracket, I'm going to do that a little bit different.
So those are my NCAA tournament thoughts. And then just to answer, one more final to back on your bracket thing. This is a chalky year, but there have only been 5 instances since 1985 where 3 number 1 seeds have made the Final Four. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. One of these 1 seeds is likely to be knocked off in an upset.
I agree.
Probably before the Elite Eight.
Yep.
And then just to answer a question from earlier, you asked, or you were talking about where Juwan Johnson was compared to other tight ends. I believe he is the 20th best tight end in the league. That's a very rough count.
Wow. I
have 19 names if you want to hear them quickly.
Just give me your bottom 5 ahead of him.
I went by division, so I don't have him actually ranked.
Do
you want me to fire them off quickly?
Go ahead, real quick.
David Njoku.
I'm going to give you a thumbs down if I don't agree with you. Go ahead.
Okay. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith. Which one?
Likely. I don't think Likely is better than Juwan. I think
they're he 100% is. Go look at his stats.
As far as a player, maybe, but as far as what they're going to do in a game, he's got to play with Mark Andrews.
He doesn't have to. When Mark Andrews is out,
we can have a whole tight end.
Isaiah Likely is a lock.
Okay, go ahead.
He's much better than Juwan.
I disagree. Go ahead.
Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers, Cole Kmet, Sam Laporta, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Kyle Pitts, Cade Otton, George Kittle, Trey McBride, Tyler Higbee.
No, McBride.
Otton, yes. Absolutely.
Come on. Cade Otton's nothing special.
And Juwan Johnson is?
No, he's not. He's not special. And I hate taking up for him because I don't like this contract at all. as we get into it, and I didn't make a Saints slot for you, so I got to leave this slot up there. I don't like taking up for Juwan Johnson because I don't like this deal. I think it's too much money. However, that being said, when you talk about what the deals are right now and where we go and whether he's a top 12 guy or not, I mean, I look at the guys that are being paid around him. I mean, you have Cole Kmet ahead of him. Cole Kmet's close. I mean, you can make an
I think Cole Kmet
either way. I mean, they're comparable.
I think Cole Kmet's better because he's a more all-around tight end. He's a better blocking tight end. I don't necessarily disagree,
but they're what and what, okay? Dalton Schultz, I don't think he's better.
I don't think he's better. I did not have Schultz listed.
Evan Ingram is better. He's better.
Better.
He's close. I'll win. But he's not that much better. He's making more money. Okay, so fine. Noah Fant's not better. Okay, he's making more money. Dawson Knox, what and what? I mean, Hunter Henry, what and what?
Dawson Knox, no, I would take Kincaid. Of those two tight ends,
I think Kincaid's better. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you that Kincaid's better than Juwan Johnson, but I think he's still playing on his rookie contract. I mean, look at some of these guys that are making similar kind of money. Mike Gesicki, he's okay. So what? I mean, Tyler Higbee,
he's not better than Mike.
He's getting old.
Mike Gesicki's not better than.
No, Tyler Higbee's getting old. He's making around that,
but he's still producing.
We're waiting for Kyle Pitts to do something. Anything, hasn't done jack.
See, the thing with Kyle Pitts hasn't lived up to his potential, but he's still been a decent tight end. He's still putting up similar numbers, comparable numbers to Juwan Johnson.
I don't know, man. It's.
But
we could probably have half of a show on.
To go back earlier, you noted Isaiah Likely having to play with Mark Andrews is why he's not better. He's putting up stats similar to Juwan Johnson.
I will say this: if I had to choose
a top end league
to back your point, I guess I think if you're talking about contracts where you are right now, you can't get Isaiah Likely, so that's out of the question anyway. I would probably rather have Isaiah Likely if he were the 100%. Star of the team. But with what he's going to do, you're going to put his numbers next to Juwan Johnson's, and they're probably going to be very, very similar. Because
they are, but he is having his targets. He's sharing with Mark Andrews, one of the best tight ends in the league, and he's still putting up those numbers. He's putting last season, he had 477 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, and one of them, didn't he have like a 65-yard touchdown or something like that? What's his long? Do you have that up?
His long was 49.
Okay, I knew one of them was long. So, I mean, Juwan Johnson's not going to catch a 49-yard touchdown pass. Juwan Johnson's got more yards than that. Again, but
he does, but he's not having targets taken away.
I'm not really arguing the point. I don't know necessarily.
And then Evan Ingram is undoubtedly better than him because Juwan Johnson has never even eclipsed 600 yards in his career. Ingram 2 seasons ago when he wasn't injured. Yeah, when he wasn't injured.
He's 2 years older now. Okay. I mean, I don't mean he's 2 years older from 2 years ago. I mean, he's 2 years older than Juwan Johnson.
That's fine. Last season, he got injured. He still had
32-year-old tight ends.
He's not 32. He's 30.
Well, he's 31.
He's 30.
Well, he'll be 31 when the season starts. That means he's 31.
I would still take him because 2 years ago, he had 963 yards receiving. Yeah. And that's almost more than Juwan Johnson has in his entire career in one season. So
I'm not a huge Evan Ingram fan.
He's much better at doing what he does than what Juwan Johnson. He's what Juwan Johnson wishes he could be, and I say that with all due respect to Juwan Johnson.
Juwan Johnson.
Evan Ingram is.
I will say this for Juwan Johnson. I definitely don't think much better is massive hyperbole.
He had a 700-yard receiving and a 900-yard receiving. When he was his last 2 full seasons, he had 700 yards receiving and 900 yards receiving. Juwan Johnson wishes he
played 9 games last year. He has never played a full season ever. He's never played a full season. I don't want a guy who's never played a full season.
Has Juwan Johnson ever played a full season?
Yeah, he played a full season, I believe, last year.
I don't believe he did. I thought he was injured for a game.
I don't think so. Let's see. Juwan Johnson.
He left a game early. I know that.
No, not last year. No, he hasn't either. You're right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Juwan Johnson, trust me when I say this. He is not as good as
I'm not taking up for Juwan Johnson.
Some of these other guys.
I'm not taking up for Juwan Johnson, but that's the going rate for a middle of the road tight end.
I'm not talking value or contract at all, and I point there. I'm simply saying you mentioned earlier where he was in terms of other tight ends. So I quickly went through in my head, very rough list, and I came up with 19 tight ends who I believe are undoubtedly.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I would do the same thing if I were sitting where you are. If I say something like that, just for not entertainment, for infomercial sake, you're going to come up with. If you asked me to come up with 16 better quarterbacks than Derek Carr, even though I don't necessarily believe there are 16 better quarterbacks, I could come up with 16 names that are argumentatively better than Derek Carr, and we could sit and I can have a debate with almost anything. I couldn't debate that there's a better quarterback that's ever played for the Saints than Drew Brees. But for the most part, when you're talking about most things, almost everything, you can come up with another side and say, I can come up with X, 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 Y, Z.
You know what's funny? The one tight end on this list who I think you could really have a debate over. I think 18 of these guys are locked on better than Juwan Johnson. The one tight end on this list that I didn't really have an opinion on, they're kind of what was Pat Freiermuth, and you said yourself that Pat Freiermuth was a little bit better.
I think Pat Freiermuth's a little bit better. However, I will say I'm before we go off today, I'm gonna leave you with this. You remind me of someone at your age, and it's not a good thing. You remind me of me at your age, and because even though you don't necessarily use the word as much as I used it at age, what are you, 27, 26, 27?
26.
Okay. So although you don't use this word as much as I used it, you basically say the same word. And absolutely, I love that you have your point of view, but you're as closed-minded at 26 as I was at 26.
I wouldn't say I'm closed-minded. I'm willing to have a discussion on these guys, but when you look at someone like Evan Ingram, who has done more in the last 3 seasons, I would willingly say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I would be willing to bet that he has almost doubled up Juwan Johnson's career.
Is he still a free agent, or did he sign?
Years. Evan Ingram, he signed with the Broncos.
He signed with the Broncos. Okay. Yeah. He signed for just shy of $12 million a year. So I mean,
the Jags didn't cut him because he wasn't good. The Jags cut him because they didn't want to pay.
They didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to give him a contract for $23 million, and
But let's see. I mean, Juwan Johnson has 1,600 yards.
I'm not necessarily saying
his career.
Here's my thing.
And Ingram done it in his last.
I'm not even telling you you're wrong, but to say that he's definitely better is a stretch. I mean,
no, not really, because
way out there.
If you look at, he played half a season last year. He had 375 yards receiving. That's almost as good as Juwan Johnson's best season.
Lance agrees with you, and also says you're a little closed-minded on your closed-mindedness.
That's fine. I have an opinion, and I can back it up with stats, and I can back it up with the eye test.
I love that you have an opinion, and I will say this: I wouldn't have you on if you couldn't at least back up your smack. I mean, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Yeah. I mean, it'd be like, okay, what do you think?
No, I'd be getting rolled over.
You probably.
I didn't even.
You don't get rolled over. I will say that you don't get rolled over.
Well, I actually really like my argument here. Not debate. Arguments makes it seem like we don't like each other, which we always get those comments.
Debate is a much better word.
I came up with these 19 names not looking at a single stat. I'm literally writing an article in the background.
Charles Mangus, by the way, is right. Evan Ingram was Peyton's second choice. He wanted Juwan Johnson. I will say this, though. The only reason why he wanted Juwan Johnson is because he's currently wearing black and gold. I think Peyton is just doing his best to try to purge.
The devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
And, and actually, let's say this. Let me clarify. I don't know if that's true, Charles.
It's not. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't.
I don't know. But Evan Ingram wasn't available until the Jags made a shocking move and cut him.
Yeah.
So that's the counterpoint to that.
Parent is the great Buddy D used to say. All right, you won't be here Friday, but we will see you on Monday.
Will not be. Yep, sounds good.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy the tournament.
Absolutely will.
It is strictly debate, y'all. I mean, I know some of y'all ask. So we're not putting on a show, and it's 100% real, but it's also not. We don't come up with what can we argue about today. I mean, it's not a show. It's 100% real. Sometimes it makes for good theater. Sometimes, as UBN says, see, always is not a good word. UBN says Gabe always gets me riled up. It doesn't always get me. Now, sometimes I'm getting riled up to get him riled up. But it's real. Anyway. Juwan Johnson, as we got about 15 minutes left in the show today. Time for your comments as we go back to the Saints. Thank you all for being a part of the Dattitude family and sticking with us. Our numbers continue to go up here on the podcast. I know that a week back from vacation is always a rough week because people didn't understand. I had a regular email me the other day and say, your show's not on Spotify. And yes, it was. He just didn't realize it was on Spotify because I hadn't done a show in 19 days. And the reason why I hadn't done a show in 19 days is I was on vacation, and he didn't realize it. So even people who are regulars don't necessarily realize when you go on vacation, even though you tell them, because they're not listening. You don't listen to 100% of the show. Even the podcasts that I listen to on a daily basis, I don't always listen to 100% of. So anyway, we are continuing to grow, and I thank you for being a part of this family. By the way, if you want to be a sponsor of the show, we have a new sponsor, I believe, coming up very soon. Don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet, but if you want to sponsor the show, very reasonable rates. Not only do you get sponsorship of a particular segment, you could be a sponsor of the Saints segment if you want. That is open. You want to be a sponsor of the Saints segment, I can tell you what the rates are if you email me, jderry@theadvocate.com. And not only will you be the sponsor of whatever segment you want to sponsor, you want me to bring back the extra point and be the sponsor of that, you'll also get advertising as well with it inside of NOLA.com. So all that comes with it if you're interested in do it. Saint for Life, good question. Am I going to do any mock drafts? I don't normally do mock drafts, but I might do a mock first round. That would be a good show to have maybe middle of April. I'm not one of these. I'm certainly not going to do 1.0 and 1.3 and 2.4 and 3. My mock 5.7. I'm not doing all that crap. But I might do a mock draft this year, mock first round. And we are going to have a live draft show in some form or fashion, and it will be here on the Dattitude YouTube page. It's good chance that it's going to be like it was the last couple of years where we've done it with the Saints insiders. So look for that. When I find out what we're going to do, we'll let you know. Let's see. Gabe says, Lance, he was answering a question from Lance Stobart from earlier. He loves the Texans' move so far. Sean says, Derek Carr has been allergic to the tight end since he's been in the NOLA. You see, I think we're going a little far again, and I'm going to tell you why. All right, let's call it back up again. Juwan Johnson. Let me call up his numbers here. All right, last year, he played, you know what? I was wrong, Gabe. He did play a full season last year. He played in 17 games last year. So he did play a full season last year, and he played a full season in 2022. So he's played a full season 2 out of his 5 seasons. Not great, but he has played a full season. I just misread the number. He was targeted 66 times last year, Sean. He had 50 catches for 548 yards and 3 touchdowns. Is that great? No. But 548 yards. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Receiving yards by tight ends as we do this live on the air in 2024. Where does he fit? 15th. Interestingly, behind Cade Otton. There you go. Gabe Henderson. Just ahead of Dalton Schultz, David Njoku, Noah Fant, Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson, Will Dissly. Isaiah Likely. He's ahead of Isaiah Likely. He's ahead of Cole Kmet. So 15th in the NFL last year. That doesn't mean that I think that he's better than, I don't know. I need to ask Holder to be on my draft show. Here's the thing with the draft show. If we do it with the Saints Insiders guys, it'll be Zach and I. So that probably won't be possible. And then look, I know it's easy as Saint for Life says Juwan Johnson hasn't lived up to all his potential. Again, after this year, if he doesn't do anything more, egg will be on Loomis's face. You're just looking for a reason to get. Look, look, I told you I don't like this contract. Okay. So let's make that clear again. I don't like the Juwan Johnson 3 years, $31 million. I would have rather them spend the money elsewhere. Now, Monday, as a listener pointed out and got on me for, he got on me for saying I would have rather them spend the money on Paulson Adebo when Paulson Adebo signed a 3-year, $50 million contract. So that's $19 million more, obviously. I would have rather them find a way, take whatever money you need to take, work your cap magic, and I would have rather Paulson Adebo. That being said, maybe Kellen Moore wanted Juwan Johnson. Maybe Kellen Moore said, of the tight ends that are left, of these tight ends, this is the guy that makes the most sense for us, Juwan Johnson. So here I love you, Saint for Life. I know you've been here for a long time. I know you're definitely a part of the Dattitude. So I'm not railing on you when I say this, because you're not the only one who does this. But can we stop just blaming Mickey Loomis for everything? Everything that is negative right now, this is where we are. We're just blaming Mickey Loomis for, if something's positive, it's somebody else. Okay? Somebody has a good game. They had a great game or whatever. Not Derek Carr. We're not going to give him credit for anything. I'm just saying in general, as I lose numbers because people don't like. Whenever you take up for somebody that people don't like, the numbers plunge. It's hilarious. I don't want to hear that shit. Turn that crap off. That's where we are in society in general. I'm just saying. You can't give all the blame to someone, but then not give credit to them later or from before. It's like we've had this talk many times before here. No one gives Mickey Loomis any credit for the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship games or whatever. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't. It wasn't that long ago the Saints were in the NFC Championship game. I know it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. What was it? 6 years ago? It's not that long ago. I know again, you got spoiled. But Mickey Loomis deserves as much credit for getting the same. Sean Payton, blah, blah, blah. Sean Payton, blah, blah, blah. You know, how many Super Bowls has Sean Payton won? One. Oh, he's going to win one with Denver. You want to bet? I bet he doesn't. So Sean Payton, blah, 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 trying to purge Saints, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, you cannot give one person credit for something and someone else gets all the blame for everything else. It is what it is. Here we go. I got to show this one. The rat actually threw to the tight end more and Carly Harley attacked the middle of the field. Bullshit. What games are you watching? That is not true at all. That is not true. You know what the rat did more than anything? Tried to dump off to his running back because it's his first look, and if someone was in his face, he just got rid of it. Don't get me into that. I'm not talking about I'm not spending one more second of today's show talking about the rat, because the rat has nothing to do with the past except for 0-7 and has nothing to do with the future. Gabe says, I thought Carr threw a ton of hospital balls. How can he do that and not throw over the middle? Both cannot be true. Good question. Nobody threw a deep ball on this team. Nobody. Like Derek Carr. In fact, y'all are going to really hate me when I say this. Derek Carr might be the best deep ball passer this team has ever had. Uh-oh. Controversy. Did he just say what I think he just said? Nobody threw over the middle like Drew Brees. Drew Brees threw over the middle as anyone. Chad says exactly what I just said, because the rat just dumped to the safety valves. That's what he always did. I know you're not taking anything too literally. Back to Juwan Johnson after all this. It's again, you want to bring Mickey Loomis into this? Fine, we'll bring Mickey Loomis in this. If you want to sign a tight end, and if you want to sign, again, I don't know how else to say this. I don't like the deal. I wouldn't have done it. However, that being said, I don't think it's that bad of a deal. If you want a tight end and this is the tight end you want, it's the going rate. Okay? It is the going rate when you look at other tight ends of his ilk. Even if you take Gabe Henderson's list and say he's 20th or whatever, 19th, 20th, whatever he is, doesn't make a difference. That's still about the going rate. It may be a few million too high. Maybe it should be 26 million instead of 31, but maybe that's what it took to get him. Maybe I would have gone for someone else. I'd probably rather, the debate I had with Gabe Henderson, I'd probably in the grand scheme of things rather have Evan Ingram. However, his age is a factor. I mean, he's going to be 31 in September. Juwan Johnson, 29. Is it that big of a deal? I think when you get to this age, it is a big deal because to me, this is it. When you're a tight end, it's kind of like being any skill player. It's almost the same for all skill players. Travis Kelce's a freak of nature, and he's definitely on the decline. To me, when you hit 32 or 33 and you're a skill player, if you get one more year out of the dude, great. So Evan Ingram's right at that point where, and he's been banged up. He was hurt last year. I don't know that I would pay that kind of money for an Evan Ingram who was hurt last year and at that age could get hurt again. Anybody could get hurt. That's the going rate. I mean, that is the going rate. I don't. So in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not as bad as many of us think it is. But you look at what happened this morning, in case you weren't with us this morning, you didn't know this. Cameron Jordan yesterday, let's go back to it and tell you again what he lowered his base salary to $12.5 million, league minimum from $12.5 million to the league minimum of $1.255. Bonus of 4.8. His total value of contract now down to $6.45 million, which lowers his cap value by $10.3 million. Cedric Wilson, then, according to Cat Terrell this morning, Cedric Wilson reworked his contract, saved another $1.7 million in cap space. So the Saints have gone from $60 million in the hole in cap space to $31.9 million ahead. Now, a lot of that is going to be draft capital and signing your draft picks. But a big chunk of it is not. What are they going to do with that money? What are they going to do with that money? Saint for Life says, what are my thoughts on trying to sign Tevin Jenkins from the Bears? Coming off the rookie deal, still solid play left tackle and left guard. Look, if the Saints can go into the season, I don't necessarily know if Tevin Jenkins is the guy I'm looking for to be my star at left guard. I told you what I want to happen. I think I like the Landon Young re-signing. I would like to see the Saints go and spend $2 or $3 or $4 million on another solid backup on the O-line. Go draft Will Campbell in the draft, hoping he's there at 9. He may or may not be. You move Fawaga to right tackle. You move Penning to left guard. I think that's the perfect scenario. The perfect scenario rarely ever happens. I get that. But the Saints have the money now to where if they don't get the tackle that they want in the draft, maybe they hold on to this money and they don't spend it until after the draft. Maybe they see what the June 1 cuts are going to be. Maybe they take a risk and say whatever's out there now is going to be out there in a couple months or 6 or 7 weeks. I don't know. I'm all about signing another guy that can come in here and that you can plug in. I thought Ali Udo was going to be that last year. It turned out that he wasn't very good. Lucas Patrick was. Saints definitely need help on the offensive line more than anywhere else. $31.9 million. They are now 14th in the NFL when you're talking about salary cap. It's pretty good considering where they were. Again, yeah, kicking the can. Yeah. But they're just showing you that it doesn't matter how dire something looks. I mean, if anything, this team has shown for all those people out there saying, I want them to suck and just eat the salary and rebuild and start over. Doesn't prove anything, first of all. Second of all, the Saints are showing you Remember how bad? There's no way they're going to barely get their neck above water. Well, they've done better than that. They've gotten us. Who thought that the Saints could potentially get to 14th in the NFL salary cap wise on March the 19th? I didn't. I ain't raising my hand. I knew they would make a lot of moves. I knew they would restructure things, whatever you want to call it. But with eating $43 million in dead cap space before it even began, it is what it is. I didn't think they would get there, but they did. All right, before we go off today, final thoughts today. Last chance to get in a comment, and I will bring Mel Kiper's dumbass back into the conversation. In case you didn't see it, his latest mock draft. Why is he even relevant anymore? And usually when I ask that question, I usually get mad at myself after a show and say, why did I give this person any time whatsoever? Because other people were talking about it this morning. I didn't plan on spending but 2 minutes on it. Other members of the Dattitude family brought it up, so I'm going to bring it up again. In case you didn't see it, Mel Kiper and his Vitalis-laden hair picked Jackson Dart as the 9th pick of the draft. By the way, UBN, happy birthday. Big 4-5 yesterday. You can block. I don't think you can block anymore. I don't think you have the knees to do it, especially at age 45. Remember when you were the youngster? That wasn't that long ago. Mel Kiper, his mock draft, his latest mock draft anyway, I don't know if it's mock 1.4 or 2.8 or whatever it is. This is why I think mock drafts are stupid and I don't usually do them. So whoever, I think it was Saint for Life who was asking me, do I like Todd McShay? Yes, I do like Todd McShay. Excellent. But I think mock drafts are stupid for multiple reasons. First of all, never in the history of mock drafts has anyone got one right. Okay. You might get the first 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 right. But I don't think I've ever seen one, and someone can prove me wrong. Gabe's probably looking it up right now. You can prove me wrong. Someone back in 2007 got the top 8 picks right. Well, good for you. They're worthless, though. After the first 2 or 3 picks that you know are going to happen, and a lot of years you don't even know that. We don't even know for real who's going to be number 1 right now. I mean, we have a good idea, but we don't know for sure. If we did, we'd go make a lot of money. Point is, mock drafts in general are not that good. But sometimes I think certain people make mock drafts they do them a certain way so they will just to get attention. I don't believe for a second. Okay, I don't have a ton of respect for Mel Kiper Jr. Now, look, I know what goes into doing draft work. That's why we have Mike Detillier. Nobody works harder on draft prep than Mike Detillier. Okay, he's been doing it for a long time. I truly believe, though, in this world that we live in today, you know this is true. People will say things and write things just so other people will click on it. They don't give it. They don't care whether they're right or not. They don't care how stupid they look. There are actually people out there who believe that the Saints are going to. Now, I just jinxed it. There's no such thing. I say this all the time when I'm doing a play-by-play. There's no such thing as a broadcaster jinx. I just jinxed it. The Saints are now going to draft Jackson Dart, and I'll come back here with egg on my face and have to praise Mel Kiper Jr. But I think there's about a 0. I'm not going to say 0.0. It's about a 0.5% chance the Saints take Jackson Dart with the 9th pick of the draft. First of all, Jackson Dart doesn't belong anywhere near the 9th pick of the draft. I mean, it was only like 2 months ago he was slotted to be like in the 3rd round. Now all of a sudden he's 9th pick of the draft. Get out of here. Second of all, Kellen Moore isn't coming in here right now. He is tied to Derek Carr. And if you're not paying attention if you don't realize that. Like it, don't care one way or the other. If you're paying attention, they did not pay, restructure, do this thing, tie themselves to Derek Carr, very likely through 2026 to draft a quarterback in 2025. Especially not a Jackson Dart, especially not with your 9th pick when you have so many important needs. Quarterback is a need, but it's Not anywhere near the top of the list. What is your number one need in this team? Well, we can sit here and debate it. But if you say anything other than offensive line, defensive line, or defensive back, then you probably should feed pigeons on Saturdays and Sundays because you don't know what the hell you're talking about when it comes to football. And I would argue that I don't think it's really anything other than offensive line. But at least you can make an argument for defensive line or a cornerback. Potentially even safety, which is why it's a defensive back. You can make those arguments. I won't agree with you, but you can make those arguments. Saint for Life likes the offensive lineman from Missouri, Membo, I believe. It'd be great additional if they can't get Campbell. Yeah, I mean, if he's still there, for sure. Also likes cornerback Darren Porter. Like him better than Will Johnson. Probably going to be there in the second round. Maybe. I just, look, in this draft, the Saints they're just, I mean, where would you put quarterback on the list in order of ranking? Forget about your hate of Derek Carr for those of you. This audience doesn't hate Derek Carr as much as most Saints viewing audiences do. Where would you put a quarterback on the list? If you put order positions, rank positions from, I don't know, 1 through 10 or 11 or whatever, quarterback somewhere around 6th, 7th. I put running back ahead of quarterback. I'd probably put wide receiver ahead of quarterback, honestly. I don't know that there's a position on the offense at all that I wouldn't put ahead of quarterback right now. Now, 2026 is a different story. I think 2026 is when you need to go get your quarterback. That's what, look, it's going to be a quarterback-rich draft next year. We said this. That's where I want the Saints to go take their quarterback. And it's when I think they will. But if you are up there and you put Jackson Dart at 9, you're just not paying attention. You're just not. I'm not saying the Saints won't draft a quarterback in this draft. I don't think they should. I'm fine with Spencer Rattler as a backup quarterback this year. You're not going to go spend money on a backup quarterback. I don't think you should. Not if you shore up your offensive line. Now, maybe the Saints are waiting. If they don't think they shore up their offensive line enough, maybe they do go spend money on a Jameis Winston type. I'm not saying Jameis Winston. I'm saying someone like Jameis Winston. That's a good point right here. UBN says people love the rat, but they want him to draft Dart. Make it make sense. I can't. They just want him to take another quarterback because they don't want Derek Carr. Chad Gage says, come on. Then they would have to give Loomis credit. Oh, you got a point there. John Burris says about Juwan Johnson, they overpaid him and Chase Young both. Last thought of the morning before we say bye-bye. You say they overpaid him. But are you looking, what are you comparing their value to? You're comparing, this is what I believe. Now, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But you're comparing the value of Juwan Johnson and Chase Young in your head to what you think. The salaries are not the same today as they were even 2 years ago. I don't know that I've ever seen a drastic difference in salaries over the course of 2 to 4 years that I've seen over the course of these 2 to 4 years. It's partly because the salary cap has expanded. It's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $300 million, maybe as soon as 2 years from now. It's what, $278 million right now, somewhere around there? $300 million salary cap. That's what it's going to be. Just a couple years. It was like $212 million just a few years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, most. I don't know. So when you're talking about overpaid, I think it's in your head. This is what someone should make. You know, one of the people that were making an argument with me yesterday about Juwan Johnson was saying he deserves like $4 million a year tops. What are you, crazy? I mean, you're talking about probably the 40th tight end in the league. Makes that. I think running backs are underpaid. But everybody else in the grand scheme of things, if you compare them to most recently, they're overpaid. It's in your head. I get it. I understand why you don't think Juwan Johnson's worth 3 years, $31 million, but that is the going rate. Chase Young, 3 years, $50 million. That's the going rate. for an edge rusher of his ilk, who was the third pick of the draft just a few years ago. What, 5-6 years ago, whatever it was. I don't necessarily think Chase Young is as good as probably the Saints do. However, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt because I don't feel that strong. I don't feel that strongly about really almost anything that they've done, except there are certain things. I love, obviously, what they've done with Cameron Jordan, and I think most of you do too. Glad he's coming back. Glad he's going to retire a Saint. Glad he was willing to take a pay cut. I think they had to do with Derek Carr what they did. They had to do it. But it's because the Saints are in this salary cap situation. Well, they figured that out this year. Guess what? They'll probably figure it out again next year. I'm not, anyone who's watched this show this is season 5. I've been saying it for the past 4 seasons. I'm not a kick in the can down the road kind of guy. However, in this situation with where the Saints are, I would much rather watch a team that's going to be 9-8 or 10-7 or have the potential to do that than if you don't do anything and you just eat it. And I don't want to watch 4-13 or 5-12. And if you cut Derek Carr, you're either going to get some real bum off the scrap heap, or you're going to go with the rat. And that equals, in my opinion, a horrendous season. I don't mean this as any. People always take this as I'm being derogatory towards Spencer Rattler, and I'm not. I don't mean that way. He's not ready. I don't think he's ever going to be ready, but he's certainly not ready now. He's proven that. Maybe he'll learn something under Kellen Moore. I don't know. Maybe he'll get to play next year as a backup if Derek Carr gets hurt again. Probably. This team can only win in their situation, in their current situation. They can only win with Derek Carr as quarterback, which is why I like the move. This might be the last comment of the day because we got to go. Elijah Gary, I don't know how the Saints can afford all these contracts. You don't have to scream at me, Elijah. If you wrote it in upper lower, I could still read it. I love you. Starting to think the salary cap is a scam. It's not a scam. Trust me. If they were cheating on the salary cap, not only would the NFL let them know about it, but 31 other teams would too, because I promise you, every team has the same exact information as Over the Cap does and SPO Track, SPO Track. Those are the 2 sites that we use for cap information. They were updated. The Cedric Wilson thing happened this morning, and they were updated like that. I hear you, but whatever. They're making it work. Ask me after the draft. I'm not going to give you a prediction. Someone asked me my prediction yesterday, and 2 days in a row now, someone's asked me my prediction on the Saints record. You can't give a prediction this year right now. You can't give a realistic prediction right now on what any team is going to be. Why can you not give a prediction? Because you have to see what happens in the draft. You have to see, are the Saints going to get potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 starters? How many potential starters are they going to get in this draft? You have to wait and see. Gabe wants me to give my official March Madness pick. Is it Houston or in Florida before we go up there? I'm not going to go chalk. I'm going to say, although I think the best team in this tournament right now is Florida. I know that I'm off Duke's the best team, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I hear you. Great. I would probably take, if I was playing a bracket with no one and I was just trying to get a high score or whatever, and I wasn't really competing against anyone, I would probably take Florida. However, I'm probably going to go with the road less traveled, and despite Gabe's trends, and I hear you, and I don't necessarily going to put a lot of money on it, but I'd probably go with Auburn. So there. Terrence, Chase Young was the 2nd overall pick, not the 3rd. Thank you for correcting me. He also says, I am correct. The quarterback is the last need on offense, maybe on the team excluding kicker. I agree. That's why you're not going to spend your first round draft pick. And Kellen Moore, again, he's been in the room with all these moves that Mickey Loomis has made. Why they've made these moves. Chad Gage puts them in this order. Offensive line, defensive back, defensive line, edge, which is the same as defensive line, really. I guess in a 3-4, you could call it a linebacker too. Then wide receiver, then running back, then tight end, then quarterback would be his order. I think that's a good order. I probably would put running back ahead of wide receiver. I might put defensive line / edge because that's how I do that. I had a defensive back, but with the moves that they made this year, I don't know. With the moves they made, it suggests that maybe defensive back is more important now. So anyway, either way, I like your order. I think that's a very solid list. I think you and Terrence are spot on. Last comment of the day before we say bye-bye. Sean, knowing the Saints, they would draft Quinn Ewers in the 3rd round. Dude, I wouldn't put it past them. I don't think they will, but I wouldn't put it past them. All right, we're going to have plenty more to talk about on Friday. I do not know who my guest is going to be as we sit here right now. I haven't even reached out to anyone. Gabe's not going to be here. It won't be a mano y mano. We will have a guest. I just don't know who it's going to be yet. So we'll find out. We will be on, obviously, during the tournament. I may or may not have that on the screen at the same time. We'll see. But it is going to wrap it up for us on this Wednesday. I want to thank Thomas Casale. I want to thank Gabe Henderson. I want to thank you, our guest, for today's show. We hope you can join us next on Friday. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page if you've not done so already. Also a reminder, if you want to get in on the fun, Dattitude brackets. You want to just enter your brackets on ESPN, find Dattitude. It's free. If you win it, if you beat us, we're going to mention your name on the show, and we're going to work on getting you an 8x10 autographed picture of Uncle Big Nick. Can't promise it, but we're going to try. That's what you get. So go enter your bracket on ESPN Dattitude, even if it's completely for fun. No money involved whatsoever. Maybe next year we'll have a giveaway. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. I'll spit it out eventually, including Apple, Spotify, many more. You can also find the replay of the show, as always, on NOLA.com/sports. Find me on bet.nola.com. Find our Saints insiders on NOLA.com/Saints. We will see you Friday. Everyone have a great couple days. Get yourself outside. It is beautiful out there. We know that ain't going to last long. We'll see you Friday. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.